Hey, Calvin. Last time I saw you, you were nothing but a young baby. It's truly an honor to have served with your dad. You need to understand that he's a man of honor. He knew how to train Marines and he knew how to have fun. And I hope that with this video, you get that better of an understanding of that.
Hey, Calvin, what's going on, buddy? Dan Sankey, Staff Sergeant, retired United States Marine Corps.
Hey, Calvin, what's up, man? Staff Sergeant Treadwell, David E. Hey, can we do that over?
Absolutely.
Hey, Calvin. It's Derek Nelson, Sergeant, retired.
Sergeant Barge, retired, USMC.
Hey, Calvin. Staff Sergeant Bernardo, retired.
Hey, Calvin, how you doing? I'm here with a bunch of guys to kind of honor your memory of your dad.
Hey, Calvin, how you doing? So it was kind of funny to be talking to somebody you never met.
Your dad, when I met him, was at Fort Leonard Wood. They brought all the instructors together, you know, what they do with all the new joins and stuff, and your dad's a hard man to miss, you know, 6'3", you know, Indian. He was a solid Marine, you know, the way certain Marines walk and talk, you know, you could tell, like, you know, he knew his stuff, and so, you know, you kind of, you know, see where you're at in the pecking order, like, am I near him, you know, trailing him, or, you know, you try to feel where you're at, and with your dad, you know, he was spot on.
First impressions, we both butted heads. We thought that stuff should be done how we wanted it done. We didn't like each other at first.
Intimidated? You know, a lot of people probably intimidated by his size. Was intimidated about how he looked. You know, he like, can look into your soul, kind of, you know.
I had to stay ahead of this guy. He was good. He was really eager to learn. He was, he wanted to know everything. He was always determined to be the best at what he did. And he was.
My first impression of John when I met him, a couple tours to Iraq myself, and he had numerous himself, but some of the stories he was telling, it just made him sound more of a badass than what I pictured him as a great mentor and as this hard-charging person, you know, that's deployed numerous times. He was, in my eyes, he was bulletproof.
Yeah, he had that like stern face, like he always looked like he was about to hit you, and then all of a sudden he started goofy laughing with his snaggle tooth.
You never knew what you were gonna get.
Yes.
It was always a surprise.
Because one, you're going to be fighting, or two, it's going to be joking around. It's nothing. There's no in between.
Absolutely.
John was an instructor at Fort Leonard Wood. He was a damn good instructor. He was very firm, but very fair in teaching the students the ins and outs and the ways to be a motor transport operator.
We joked around a lot about, you know, instructors being student lovers, but with John, it was different. He was very strict with them. He showed them everything that he knew, but deep down, you can tell he cared about every single one of them.
Very professional. Always took the genuine care of the Marines that were assigned underneath him. He knew how to get the job done, to train these Marines that would eventually serve in combat. He knew that the skills that he would give them would eventually lead them to war. Hopefully with the knowledge, the basic knowledge he could instill in them would give them the abilities to come home.
I looked up to John right from the get-go. just because of his demeanor and how he carried himself, how he held himself, the respect that everybody had for him. When he'd give our classes out at TA 236, or the convoy classes, the IED classes, the first echelon maintenance classes, whatever the case may be, how he gave his presentation of the class, and one thing, how if he saw a student starting to fall asleep or bob for apples, how he would just snatch him up, he'd slam his hand on the desk, and the kid would just jump, and I started doing that, and
John would often say that he would give the hardest times to people that he saw potential in, because he wanted to make sure that those people achieved their potential. I believe that. I didn't like his process at all, but it certainly taught you to stand up for yourself. It certainly taught you to be a little bit more, thick skin, cutting your teeth kind of, I needed every ounce of toughness I got out of those experiences, especially, with a guy like that, in order to be able to summon up kind of my own strength and try to get through some of the harder days in my life.
If there was something wrong with you, he found out about it real quick, fast, and in a hurry, and tried to squash it. Granted, if that meant screwing with you to the point of making you snap, of course, he'd try that one also.
If you did something stupid, he's gonna let you know that forever. But he didn't hold it against you. That was the uncommon point about it.
More or less, he was one of my best mentors that I had.
One day, we were with the platoon, and Chad had just bought a new vehicle, and he was proud of it. And it was fall time, so there was bags of leaves everywhere. He had went to lock his car, but instead of hitting the lock button, he accidentally hit the trunk open button and walked away. You could see him strutting his stuff across the street. I looked over at John, and I didn't have to say a word. I looked at him, he looked at me, we both looked at a couple bags of leaves, and it just happened to happen.
I had fishing poles and a tackle box and a cooler in the back of my truck, and I come out one day and Sankey and Davis had set them up in the parking lot like they were out fishing. Beer was in the cup holder, and it was just in the middle of the parking lot at the barracks.
When I first got to the team, they were all big into fishing, and I wasn't. And he had told me, he's like, I bet you a case of beer I can get you to fish within the first 30 days of you being here. And I said, yeah, okay, sure. And I think maybe 2 weeks later, we were down at Happy Hollow on Fort Leonard Wood, and I got hooked. I don't think I ever bought him that case of beer though. I think I owe Calvin the case of beer at 21 then.
He would do some stuff that would kind of get on my nerves. We would get buses, transport the Marines from one point to another. He'd steal my bus, and then I would catch him down at 236. I'm like, hey, John, why'd you take my bus? And he's like, well, your other instructor didn't want it, because if he wanted it, he would have kept it. And he just kind of said, he just laughed and just walked away, and I'm like, there's nothing real I could do, because, it's already done. So I just kind of blew it off and tried to get back at him and stuff, But, when it's time to work, he worked. When it's time to play, he always tried to get you.
You know what? I came close to beating him on a PFT run.
No.
I almost did. I almost did. No.
Prove it. Prove
No,
it.
the key word, I almost beat him.
Where's the footage
right?
of this?
No, let me finish. I almost beat him. And then when he heard me coming behind him, he saw me and goes, oh, hell no. I'm not going to let Bernardo beat me. He took off. I was like, God dang.
He must have been playing around, yeah.
He was 6 foot with 5 foot legs.
That
was always a
He
challenge.
was tired.
John was a great guy. Always knew how to have fun, very family oriented. He had a smile that would bring life to a room. He had a scowl that instantaneously let you know where he stood on situations. Fun to be around, practical joker. May or may not have wrapped people's car in saran wrap. loved sitting down and having a few beers and sharing stories, and especially with people that he bonded with. If you had earned John's respect, you had made the connection of brotherhood for life.
One thing that always impressed me a lot about John was that he always upheld the same standard that he enforced, especially when it came to like physical things. Like in the military, you have to be in good shape, you know, and he was always in good shape. It drove me nuts how good of a runner he was, but he was determined. He was one of the most intelligent leaders, I think, that I've ever met. He was a guy I always respected and always kind of used his image as the ladder for my own comparison of like how I'm doing, you know, like how much better I could be. I would look at John and see what he was doing, and I would try to emulate that to a degree. You know, I love the guy. He was family to me. He still is.
I remember we had a barbecue out at his place, and it was basically the first time I went out drinking with him, but, you know, outside of work, and everybody was there. You know, it was never just one person was invited. It was anytime he did something, he made sure the whole family was there. You know, he brought us all in, and we all had a good time. He's definitely a brother to me.
You know, he always led from the front, never from the rear. He was a go-getter. He showed what true leadership was. He never faked the funk. He said how it is. He was real. He was true. You know, once we become a tight group, you know, you're no longer just fellow Marines, you're now family.
So as we were on Camp Pendleton in 4th Supply Battalion, he said he met somebody. And at that instant, it was like, come on, whatever, John. You met somebody, great. Let's go out and have fun. He wouldn't, though. He would save money. Because the girl that he met was going through college. And so he wanted to send her money to help her better herself. And you would go into John's room and he'd be eating top ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Once Calvin was born, he wanted to be home a lot more. He wanted more off time. There for a while, we didn't see him as much.
He went from wanting to be out partying, having a great time all the time, to wanting to get back home.
The look in his eyes right after you were born, you could tell that he would make a sacrifice of himself for you because you changed him. The ability to him hold you when you were a baby, he wanted to be with you more than life itself. But he, as a Marine, he knew that as a leader, he had to move forward, had to be ready for whatever the Corps had placed in front of him. And as he prepared to move to Pendleton, he knew that he would eventually be deploying again, right after he left Fort Leonard.
While we were at the training cell, we would sit there and talk about kids, you know, our families and stuff. And when he would talk about Calvin and his family, you know, he just smiled ear to ear, you know, he took a lot of pride in talking about his family. You know, he loved them very much. But John was also a Marine, so, you know, he knows, you know, as Marines, we deploy. So he didn't want to be one of those guys trying to hide, you know, in some stupid little unit, you know, non-deployable. John was, like I said, a standard of Marines. He took care of his family and took care of the Marine Corps.
I saw him and Elena and Calvin in a Walmart in St. Roberts. We were getting ready to walk out and they were walking in, and I'd never seen him smile as big and as much as he did when he was holding. It was like shortly after Calvin was born, and the smile and the joy of just pure joy and happiness in his eyes and his demeanor. I know for a fact that, he loved his wife, he loved Helena, but I think he was so in love with being a dad.
You try to make it better for your next generation. If you don't stand up, and take care of business, who will, So, you gotta have a certain mentality, I guess, a personality. You always try to, I try to make it better for my kids, and John the same way. You try to make it better for Calvin and stuff, and do what you gotta do. Just take care of your own, and hopefully it'll come back on you, and they'll take care of you.
I was at a Blackhawks game. I was watching hockey, and my phone rang, and it was a guy. His name was Dave Wilkinson that was calling me, and he never really called me all that much, so it was kind of a surprise. But once in a while, you would get a call from a guy saying, "Hey, how you doing?" So I just kind of hit ignore on it the first time, but he called me right back immediately after that again, so I knew something was going on. So I went out to the concession area at the United Center, and I answered my phone. I was like, "What's going on? Wilkes, what's up?" He's like, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but John died yesterday. And I didn't know who John was. I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about, John?" He's like, "Sergeant Davis was killed yesterday in Afghanistan." And I don't know how long I said. I know I didn't say anything for a minute because he had to ask me if I was still there. And I said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know. And, I thought I'll talk to you tomorrow." And I sat back down and I didn't say another word for the rest of the night. I don't even remember who played the game. I don't know. It took about every ounce of my kind of composure just to not completely lose it in the car on the way back.
It was February 24th, 2013. I received a message from Chad Bernardo, and I called him instantly back because I couldn't believe it. I was sitting at my workstation at Fort Leonard Wood, and I was in awe. I couldn't breathe. John is the type of guy that you just can't see this happening to. The places that you could see him going in life were phenomenal. In hindsight, you can see him standing up for his Marines and doing whatever it took to ensure their safety, even if that meant putting himself in harm's way. And that's truly the kind of man he was. It took me weeks to fully accept the fact that he was gone.
Give me a second, I'm sorry.
I didn't believe it. The guy had numerous tours underneath his belt before. He had been through some crazy shit before, and it was just, it's still, to this day, it's still hard to believe that he's, not here anymore.
I kind of got angry, sad, emotional, conflicted on all aspects. Took me a while to fully grasp the idea. Probably sat there a good couple days on trying to just think, what the heck just happened?
Right away, I didn't know what to say. I started crying. I cried, couldn't believe it. First thing that went to my head was Sankey, because I know those two were like brothers, blood brothers. Called him, he didn't answer. I'm not gonna lie, I cry every year on his anniversary. Every year.
A whole bunch of emotions came in, questions. Anger and And then that night, I saw the smile on his face that night at Walmart, and I thought about Calvin. Then I thought about my kids and how no kid should grow up without their dad or mom,
If you were to see Calvin today, what would you tell him the most important things are that you think John would say about growing up?
Wow. All right. Don't take the easy road. Work for what you want. Learn everything possible. And try your best at everything. Don't give up on yourself.
To always go after his dreams and never give up. To make an impact in the world, like his father did.
Yeah, your word's your bond. So friendship. Build them. Honor them. Yep, that's about it.
To be your own person, to not let others influence you, to never give up, to never quit, never let anybody talk down to you, never let someone give you limitations. And to fish.